Hey, I'm Dan, and this is Dan's Planes. This is my Hangar 9 P-40. It's got to be 12 to 15 years old by now. I've flown this thing dozens and dozens and dozens of times. I have previous videos on it where I describe the work that I've done on it, but suffice it to say, it's needed a lot of covering over the years, redone because of glow oil and because I've basically flown it off. And I've had to rebuild the front end and um, let's see, I I replaced retracts with electric cheapies from China, which didn't last for more than 2 flights. So I've done a whole bunch of stuff to it, and the last time I flew it with the mechanical retracts, which always sucked in the past, the bell crank inside here broke. I was hoping my Hangar 9 Corsair retracts would fit, but they're just not long enough by about a quarter of an inch. So that just royally sucks because I can't really fit it in that way without doing some kind of major woodwork. And I'm doing that, and this is the side. No, both sides have exhaust gases because I've got a Keleo exhaust on here. I'm lucky enough to have one of those on this P-40 and my Hangar 9 Spitfire, which I need to rebuild because I flew that so much. It got so oil soaked that literally the firewall, after I landed and was taxiing the firewall forward, just completely fell out of the airplane. It was hilarious. So I've got to fix this because now this is getting oil soaked and oil had got under there. And I've never been a fan of this covering. It's been god awful. And I don't think it's just due to the age of the airplane, but it is what it is. So I've got to tear off this, most likely tear off this. And I think I might have to tear into the top to get to the wood that the bell crank is attached to replace it properly, but I'm not sure offhand. I haven't looked at this in quite a while. So that is my next step because I've got it in my mind. If you've watched my channel, you see that landings are my weakest flying skill, if you want to call skill in air quotes. Um, I like to do hard landings, and I'm just not good at them, especially with warbirds. So I want to use my Hangar 9 P-40 and my Hangar 9 Spitfire to just get used to warbirds again and to practice landings before I jump back to my bigger birds. Now, put an asterisk on that. I've got the MiG-3 coming up where my buddy put my new DA-50 in it instead of the Zenoa G-38 that it has. So that airplane flies like a trainer. I don't mind flying that one, but it does like to tip over. I think the landing gear needs to be bent forward a bit. And I've got the J3 Cub that we've made into the Corsair Cub coming from the Experimental Aircraft Association Youth Group. So those two are coming up that I should be flying those before the season is over here in 2024. But in the meantime, I want to fly my Hangar 9 Warbirds. So I've got to do these repairs, and then I've got to switch everything from my old Spitfire to a new Spitfire airframe. Thankfully, I have the one that's damaged and worn out. Then I have one or two used ones that somebody ran as electric, and then I've got one that's new in the box. So I've got plenty to choose from. I've always thought about fiberglassing that too. I don't know if it would make it too heavy or not, but let me know in the comments what you would think of me fiberglassing a Hangar 9 60 to 90 size plane. Because I believe they do it with pylon racers, I think. They glass it and they do those beautiful paint jobs, but I don't know if it'd be too heavy or not, so let me know. Anyway, time to dig in. Good news, the wood did not break on the bell crank. The retaining screw fell out. So good news, don't have to rebuild wood and get in there. But bad news, I've got to see if I have a machine screw that's going to fit that. So that means going through my myriad of machine screws I've got all over the place. So could be an easy fix if we just get the right screw pretty quickly. I've got to remove just a little bit of wood and covering here so I can get to it. Because actually, if you look straight down on it, it is covered. Just slightly covered. All right. Well, I did not find the Cinderella screw. It seems that the diameter is number 6, but it's not a 632. It's something metric, of course. I went through my small batch of miscellaneous screws and did not find the Cinderella screw. So the next batch I'd have to go through is a big mayonnaise jar full of miscellaneous machine screws, and I don't know that I want to wait for it, screw with it. Yeah, I went there. When I could probably put a 440 through there, it'd be a little loose, so the connection would be a little wobbly. But put a washer underneath the head and then put a lock nut on the underside of where the bolt would go. I'm pretty positive this screw had a nut on the bottom of it, and if I find the magic screw, I still wouldn't have the magic nut to go along with it. So I mean, I could take a chance and try to order a metric screw, but you can't just get one, probably, and who knows how long that would take, and have it probably be wrong. So is a 440 the right thing to do? Well, kind of depends on what you have and the time you're willing to put into it. I don't want to go through a whole mayonnaise jar full of screws. Call me crazy, but it just doesn't sound fun, and I'd still not have a nut. So I think I'm going to go the 440 route and see how that can go. Our golden. I listened to somebody who was shouting at the screen telling me not to do the 440 option, telling me the better way to do it, which I just figured out. And that was when I tried to put the 440 bolt in there, it was cross-threading on the lock nut, the aluminum lock nut, but it ended up pushing the lock nut out, which was great because then I just got a 632 bolt and washer and I said lock nuts, I meant blind nut. And I got a new blind nut that's also 632, and I just hooked it all up, and now she is smooth as greased butter, which is really smooth. So hopefully that's going to satisfy the retract gods, and I can get more than a couple flights out of her before having the retracts collapse. So now I've got to pull off this covering, which like usual, this just all peels right off. Like I was saying, this covering is junk. I mean, I know oil gets on it, but it's supposed to get on it. And anyway, got to pull off all the top covering on this, inspect the bottom covering. It feels okay. And probably heat the wood with my hot sock iron, or I guess the hot sock is the thing you put on the iron. So when you heat wood, the oil will come out of it. So if you put down a paper towel on the wood, heat it with the iron, then you'll notice that the paper towel will then have the oil. which is good to try to get the oil out, but it's bad if you have any oil because you're trying to put covering on with heat. If you have any oil, it's going to come and rise to the surface. So I believe what I've done in the past, besides using K2R, which I don't know if they even still sell that at Ace Hardware. It's a carpet cleaner. It sucks the oil out of the wood. You just spray it on and let it sit for days. I think another way I did this was to use some kind of, what was it called? It's a sealer. I think, okay, I think it's this one here. Yeah. This stuff. Aero Gloss. Hot fuel proof. So you put that on the wood and it seals the wood really well. You also get high from the fumes as a side bonus. Okay, kids, I didn't say that. So use that, and that dries very quickly. Let's see. Oh, 24 hours. Okay, I guess I lied. Yeah, so give it 24 hours to dry, sand it, and then you can put covering on, and I think it will stop the oil. It will create a barrier on the wood that will stop the oil from coming out. So I'm going to have to wait 24 hours on that, but at least the retracts, which is the part I was dreading, were actually not bad at all to fix. So another item off the checklist. I've pulled up the covering, which left a lot of residue from the old film. My pieces I pulled off are there, so I can trace new ones. Back in the day, I researched how the best ways to remove this residue, and the two best ways were to use packing tape and just press packing tape down on it, and you might even apply a little heat with the iron to it. And the other way is to just use paper towels with acetone and just keep going over and over and over and over and over and over it till it's gone. So that's the next phase. Packing tape didn't clean off very much at all, so here I go with some paper towels and acetone. Well, some elbow grease paid off. You want to make sure you also get into the crease really well, because the oil likes to congregate there and accumulate there, and it'll get up under there and you'll have to redo it again. So how do you know if you're done? Well, you get almost no or no residue on your paper towel when you put a clean paper towel with some fresh acetone on it. That tells you you've got everything up. So make sure you get all your edges surrounding. It doesn't really feel oil soaked, so I don't think I really have to seal this. I think I'm going to be okay just to recover it again. Put brown down first and then put green on top of it, just like they did at the factory. Hopefully I have some brown and green. I'm pretty sure I do. That'll be the next thing I look for. Point out when you're doing this, you're wrapping your plane in plastic for two reasons. One, for looks, and two, to fuel proof it. So when these are made at the factory, they would have had this tail sitting on a table. They would have done the whole top side of it in the brown, put the green on where it needed to go. Then when you get the ARF, you take this piece, you slide it in, you mark the two edges, pull it out, and then you cut about an 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch in from the mark and remove that piece of covering. Then you epoxy that bare wood to the inside bare wood of the fuselage. But the covering goes into the fuselage by a 1/16 or an eighth of an inch. So that's creating that, and then the epoxy is creating a seal, so oil from your engine's not going to get in there. But here we've got a repair, so we're not able to get inside the fuselage, and we can't cut away the epoxy in there. So what I do, and I think other folks do too, is you do a kind of a strip on here first, and cut it in a way that you're not leaving a large opening here. Then put your final piece on top of that. So you're making kind of a little gutter in a way. All right, the more you know. To heat that crease in place, we're not going to use the big iron. We're going to use the small creasing iron, which I tell you, I wish I would have known about this when I was a kid doing these things. The very first model that I fully built, a gentle lady, I went through and followed the instructions, not having anyone to help me out whatsoever, having no internet. All you could do is go to a hobby shop to get help. It said to iron on the covering, so I literally went and got a clothes iron and tried to iron on the covering. Oh my God, if you would have seen how wrinkled and nasty that turned out. I took it into the hobby shop, and then they showed me the sealing iron and heat gun. So we got it all worked out. But you buy this trim tool, and it comes with a rounded head on it, a flat head there, and then rounded on the top. And I found that can't get into crevices like you really need to, so I bought this flat one, and I find that I can use this way more, especially to get into the hinge crease. This is definitely the way to go for that. So it's definitely worth the money to get a trim tool and to get the little trim piece there. Another thing I want to point out is this leading edge I did rounded. And I did that on purpose because there's a theory out there that when you make square pieces, the corners tend to lift up, and then they get oil under them, and then it creates a cycle of getting more oil. And if you round the edges or use round pieces to fix covering, then it won't come up as easy. So seems to be what people go with, so that's what I'm doing there. Okay, there's just a tiny opening there that you could probably stick a pin into, and I'm going to put the main brown piece on, and then I'm going to put a little drop of CA in there just to seal that spot. Now I'm using a brand new number 11 blade. Do yourself a favor. When you're doing a monocoat project, start with a brand new blade. Even though you think that they're pretty sharp, you're just fighting against yourself and giving yourself rough edges. And those rough edges end up being kind of serrated. And when they're serrated, even though you heat them down, they're rough. And that, in my opinion, can trap oil and can make the covering eventually work loose. So do yourself a favor and don't fight against the covering. Just have a new number 11 blade. Are all done. I don't think there are any air bubbles in there. Okay, maybe just a little bit here. I'll work on that. Again, the line is cut pretty good. Just a couple creases you can barely see just because I'm shining a light on it so you can really see it, but otherwise it turned out real nice. Sometimes covering jobs turn out nice and sometimes they don't. This one turned out nice. I'm pleasantly satisfied. So now she's ready to fly again. That's it for the repairs of the Hangar 9 P-40 Warhawk. If you like this or found it useful, please give me a thumbs up and think about subscribing. If you want to throw a buck towards future projects, you can click on the Patreon link in the description. I wish you blue skies and good speed. Addendum video to my P-40 repairs. I took it to the Mac Hodges Field for the Dino DiGiorgio Sr. Memorial Warbird Rally and tried to take off in the grass. It just kept nosing over. So maybe the wheels are too small. I don't know. My buddy Mark flew his and he landed, bent his landing gear, tried bending it back and it broke at the spring. And coincidentally, my buddies thought that my wheels were not sticking forward enough, which is why I was tipping over. So my one buddy tried to bend it forward and snapped right by the spring. So that was it for these retracts. And I'm going to get electric ones. I'm not going to mess with mechanical again. I don't even know if I could get mechanical again, but also coincidentally, or maybe ironically, I don't know, the gear that Mark broke was the opposite gear that I broke. So I told him he could take out my retracts and have both of them, and he was able to make one gear out of both sets. So I need to find some electronic gear. I bought cheap China gear in the past. They're sitting in my other wings for this. They lasted one flight and they're too flimsy. Then I had a Corsair Hangar 9 Corsair gear, but they were just slightly too short to fit in here. So I'm probably gonna have to get E-Flight gear.